you're welcome here. Make yourself at home.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We're super excited to be here today. I'm Jo, and I head up the health recruitment team here in New Zealand, based in Auckland at our head office. And next to me is a lovely Robyn.
Hi, welcome.
Do you want to just say a little bit about yourself, Robyn? And we've got a team of 4 here to help international health workers move to New Zealand, particularly midwives. So we'll just, Robyn, do you want to just give a bit of your background?
Yeah, so I've been working in recruitment for a number of years, doing quite a lot of international recruitment based both New Zealand, Sydney and in London. So, and now focused in on the health side of things. So I work alongside Jo and also Gina and Jane, who are wonderful.
That's our wonderful team, yeah. And I'm originally from the UK myself, moved here 22 years ago, and can testify for how amazing New Zealand is. It grabbed me, and I came over for a couple of years and never left. So it was a good decision. So the purpose of the webinar this morning is to really help you get started on your journey to move to New Zealand. This is purposely for midwives, so that's what we're going to be talking about this morning or evening, wherever you are in the world, and hopefully we'll be able to give you some tips and some insights for you to be able to start your own journey and make a bit of a plan. We do have a chat function, so feel free to post any questions that you have, and we'll keep an eye on that and answer anything as we go through. If we do miss answering any specific questions that you've got, don't worry about it, because we do send a follow-up email afterwards with a copy of the actual webinar, and we'll also put some answers into some of those questions that we might have missed. So let's get started. We've got about 26 minutes now, so we'll keep it to that time for you. We know you're all very busy. And I guess the first thing is just to acknowledge that it is International Women's Day today.
Yes.
Although wherever you are in the world, it might not be
yet.
It might not be yet. So, but yes, we just want to acknowledge that because it is a significant day for us women, as every day is. And then the other thing I just want to do, also just maybe more of a housekeeping thing, or just to let you know that we're going to be travelling to come and meet some of the nurses and midwives and other health professionals overseas. And so just to let you know that I am going to be in Singapore on the 27th and 28th of March. And then I'll be travelling to the Netherlands and we'll be in Expo on the 1st and 2nd of April. And then I am doing a seminar about moving to New Zealand for health professionals on the Sunday, the 16th of April. So I thought just be good to let you know that in Manchester. Thank you. So again, we'll follow up with details around that, because you can get a ticket to come and see us at the seminar in Manchester. Okay, let's get started into the kind of detail of it. Look, you probably already know that there are lots of really great opportunities for midwives in New Zealand. And what we're talking about here is all throughout New Zealand, different locations, you know, whether you want the city or whether you want something close to the beach, or you prefer a more sort of rural kind of lifestyle. We have got something for everybody. We've got relationships with employers that are hiring midwives throughout New Zealand. So we can basically pretty much deliver what you're looking for in your dream of moving. And the other big thing is on the visa side.
Yes, that's great.
So midwives can get a straight-to-residency once they arrive in New Zealand. And so obviously if you're looking for a more permanent move, then that's something to consider as well. So that's really great news. Okay, so getting prepared. What should you do first? Robyn, do you want to talk a little bit about, the first step?
Yeah, the first step, some of you may already have started this, but the first step is to become registered, New Zealand registered. So with any health role, it's specific to what sort of role you're actually doing.
Yeah.
So in this situation, you need to be registered through the Midwifery Council of New Zealand. And their website offers you all the information that you need. It's important just to clarify here, it's not the Nursing Council of New Zealand, because a few people do get a bit confused with that, because I know in other areas they're combined, but in New Zealand they're two separate councils, so you do need to go through the Midwifery Council and look at their registration guide, which will give you an indication of all the things that you need, and one of those is a Bachelor of Midwifery or equivalent.
Yes, that's right. And that is, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that is super, super important, because if you've got a Bachelor of Nursing and you want to work in midwifery, then you're going to need nursing registration, and you will only be able to work in the labour and delivery ward. So to work as an actual midwife, where you're working across all the functions, antenatal, postnatal, then you need to have a Bachelor of Midwifery, and you need to be registered with the Midwifery Board. So that's a really key thing that, as Robyn said, people do get confused about. We've actually got a registration guide that we put together to make those steps sort of easy for you. So we will put those on the follow-up email to you as well. And actually, you only need 1 year's practice post being registered. So you're qualified, you've got your registration where you're currently working, and you only need to have 1 year's experience to be eligible to apply for registration, which is really good. It used to be 2 years, so I think they done changed that about 6 months ago. So, you know, if you're feeling young and free, and you want to come over here and just have an overseas experience, then come over, do a couple of years and enjoy New Zealand. And the other thing is, if English is not your first language, then you will need to do an English language test, and that would normally be IELTS or OET. So those are the two that are acceptable for that. So just think about that. So Bachelor of Midwifery, to get your and an English test if you need it, 1 year's practice, and apply to the Midwifery Council of New Zealand, not the Nursing Council. Okay, and then so what next, Robyn, do we suggest that people do?
The next thing would be to do a bit of research on, like Jo was mentioning before, where you perhaps like to live in New Zealand, and what and the reasons why too, because I do find employers often ask, so why are you interested in our hospital or this location? What pulls you there? Sometimes it may be you already know somebody who's living there, you may have family connections, which is great, but then there's also other things in regards to what sort of lifestyle you want to live. So it's really important to do some research, plenty available on the internet in regards to that. And I'd say the next thing is to make sure that you have saved enough funds to make your move here, because it's really important that you have that in place. So you're aware of what the costs are to get registered, and also in regards to actually physically moving over here.
Yeah, and that's very important, that people get all excited about moving and then they go, oh, actually, yes, I need some money to do that. And so just to give you an indication of that, the money that you might need, then registration is $1,350. So that's your application fee. And then everybody that applies, before you can apply for an annual practicing certificate in midwifery for New Zealand, then you need to complete a cultural competency for midwifery practice course. That's a cultural competency for midwifery course. And that's another $450. So you need to do that online before you can apply for your APC. And then your APC is $690. And then once you've got your registration and you're working, And there are some other overseas competency programs that you need to do as well, just so that you're fully up to speed with the New Zealand way. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea there. So that's costs for registration. So I suppose all up 13.50, 4.50, 6.90. So what's that, about 2.5?
Yeah,
New
New
Zealand
Zealand
dollars.
dollars.
Then you've got your one-way flight. If you're shipping anything
Yes.
over, you want to have some funds probably for your first 3 months of accommodation, just to make sure that you know you've got that in place. However, I was actually just going to talk about relocation allowances here,
Yes.
because we can get some, you know, there's some really good packages.
Yes, the employers do, like you say, John, they do offer that, and it differs depending on what employer, but there's some great packages. But we must reiterate, because some people expect this money to be given to them as they accept the job offer, but this is something that's reimbursed once you're here. So once you're actually working it, you then have to put in your receipts, and it's reimbursed usually in your first pay packet, and then you're bonded to the job for a set amount of time.
That's
right. Understandable. So yes, yeah. So you need to have it in your bank. You need to be prepared, have the money saved in your bank account, but yes, we can, you know, coordinate a great relocation.
That's right.
Reimbursement for you.
So when we've secured your job, helped you secure your job, then we'll make sure that you're on the right pay scale according to your experience, and we will make sure that you get a relocation package that's competitive in the market, because we are aware of, you know, what everybody gets. So we know that you're going to get a good rate, and you might possibly get between 5,000 and 10,000 New Zealand dollars is probably about right at the minute. And as Robyn said, yeah, you need the money to pay. And the other thing is your visa as well.
Yes.
So I didn't mention that. And so and with the visa, you can go online and do that yourself with Immigration New Zealand, or we do have a visa team here, an immigration team. So we've got about 20 licensed immigration advisors. So if you want help with your registration, then we can provide a complete service in terms of advice on which visa, and help putting together your application and managing that whole process so it can happen as quickly as possible. And, you know, the key thing there is once you've been offered the job, is we want to help you get to New Zealand as soon as possible, in line with the time frame that we've discussed, but keeping the employer up to date. So if we're managing your visa, then we can be clear about when you can expect to be in New Zealand, and keep the employer up to date on when that visa is going to come through. So you can't, to apply for your visa, you need to have secured your job, and you also need to have secured registration. You don't need your annual practicing certificate, but your registration has to be approved. So those two things need to be in place before you can get your visa. Then you apply for your visa. Once your visa comes through, then you're on your way and can move to New Zealand.
So with that, I think it's probably also a good idea to set your goal on when you think you'd like to be here, because you do need a good 4 to 6 months for that process.
Yeah.
In regards to registration and securing your job.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you've got to add on your visa time as well.
Yeah.
To come through.
Yeah, which can be, well, that's usually about 6 weeks, isn't it? But you're right, because what we found is if you don't set a bit of a goal for when you move in, then time just slips away, and then before you know it, it's a year on. So I think just have a bit of a sense of when you want to be here. And actually the other thing with that is we can represent you to employers before your registration is finished, is complete. So if you're actually in the process of doing your registration, it shows commitment, which is really good. So we do ask that you do that and get started, but you don't need to wait to secure your job you don't need to wait till your registration's done.
No.
And so we can start to work with you and help you find some opportunities. So let's have a little chat. Actually, this is really important. Is depending on, so in New Zealand, there's the role that you will move into as a midwife is called a core midwife. Now, that's a fully paid midwife by a public hospital, and you'll be doing fully rostered shifts, so fully rostered 24-hour shifts, and I'm sorry, not 24-hour shifts, but we don't say to work for 24 hours. But fully rostered shifts, and you'll be working in a maternity facility, in a hospital. And so you might be rotating between an antenatal, postnatal ward, or labour and delivery unit. There are a few jobs as a community midwives, but you will also be working for the public hospital system, Te Whatu Ora. If you are currently a community midwife overseas and you are self-employed, you're not able to move to New Zealand and do that in New Zealand, because you have to be you can't be self-employed and get a visa.
Yes, you need accredited employer.
You need to be working for an accredited employer to get your visa. Hopefully I haven't lost you there. It will kind of sound a bit confusing, I think, but the main thing to remember is your role is going to be as a core midwife when you move to New Zealand. And even if you only do that for a year or two and move into more of a community role, or eventually you want to be self-employed, you can do that, but that's where you're going to start when you move here.
And I guess the benefit for you as a midwife coming into a new country is that core midwife role gives you a broad covering of how New Zealand midwifery works.
Yeah.
So you're going to get all of that experience within that role if you then do want to further down the track move into a community or what we call lead maternity care.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. No, that's perfect. So how do we, in terms of getting a job, I was just going to talk a little bit about how we help you. I mean, that's our core function. So there's a team of 4. And our core function is working with you to help you secure a job. And so what we are likely to have done first is have your CV up to date. And just in terms of format.
Quite simple is always good, no longer than 2 pages. But the format obviously is you're going to put down your most recent job, the one that you are hopefully in at the minute, and then work back from there. Really good to put down what your core skills and competencies are within each role as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being clear on so what the role was, where, and the date.
Yes, date and what you did.
And your qualification, where you did it, and
Yes.
the date, and the dates that you did it as well. So it sounds obvious, but it's really critical that you've got that key information on there, because that's something we need to look at, and also when we send your CV and a profile to an employer. So those are the kind of first steps. Start your registration, send us your CV, and then we can arrange a one-on-one consultation with you. And Gina, our colleague, she will do those, and she does quite a thorough, usually sort of half an hour to 45 minutes, to understand your plans and what you're looking for, what your skills are. And so we can then help you to formulate your next steps more clearly, depending on where you're at in the process. I was also just thinking sort of what not to do, really, in terms of the job process, is not to just kind of fire your CV off.
Totally.
Yeah. Lots of employers.
Yeah, we're here to work on behalf of you, so to help you. And the way that we can make that work is by managing that process for you and being your advocate. So if you're firing CVs off everywhere, you'll find that they'll probably end up in a pile at the employers being worked through, versus coming with us. We can we have those contacts already, so we're talking with them, and usually your CV would then be one of the first to be seen, and we can help you manage the process along the way, which is great, especially given that you are overseas, so there's those time zone differences and things like that. So
and actually we should add there's no cost for our service, so we are paid by the employer if they hire you. And so for you, it kind of makes total sense that we can represent you, because we can put you straight in front of those decision makers, rather than you having to go through the sort of application process online. And as Robyn said, we work with hospitals all throughout New Zealand. So we're very much in touch with all the vacancies and vacancies coming up that aren't necessarily advertised as well. So it means that you can kind of just tell us what you're looking for, and we'll match that. We'll match that, absolutely. And it makes it quicker, actually. Saves so much hassle for you, because we kind of have this philosophy. It's kind of like do it once, do it right. Yes. And our success rate, I would say 100%, but I'm going to say 99%, because there's been an odd situation where maybe somebody hasn't been able to get a reference, or has perhaps had some issues, reference hasn't been up to kind of standard, and actually on that, another good point. References, also to be ready to offer 2 referees as well. So employers will want to see 2 references, and one of those needs to be your current line manager, so who you're reporting to. Now, we do understand that you may not have told your current employer that you're looking to make a big move, and that's fine as well. We can wait until the job offer comes through to get that one, but just so you've got that in mind, it is required and it is essential. So you need to think about who would be the best people for those references, and they're usually done via email. So that's another thing. Lots of people worry about, are they going to be called, that sort of thing. Initially it would be an email, and there might be follow up from that, but we definitely let you know first so that you could let your referees know of that. That's right, and so some hospitals may call your line manager as a final check, but doesn't always happen, does it? Mostly we just get 2 written references, and we won't contact your referees unless you give us permission to do that. So don't worry about that. And we're very, very mindful of that situation. And so let's just have a little chat about immigration and visas, because there's a couple of things that we get asked a lot by people, which is there an age limit, people tend to say. And so with that, there's not an age limit. It's just that if you want to get residency, then you need to be applying for residency before you turn 56, basically. So, and you need to allow time to get here and apply for residency. So really, if you're 53, 54, you need to be very mindful of that. The current visa that you'll be applying for, it's called an accredited employer work visa, and that means so that your employer must be accredited to be able to hire somebody from overseas. And so we only work with employers that are accredited that can do that. The other thing is with the accredited employer work visa is you can bring your partner and your children as well with you. So that's also really helpful to know. So it is, the whole family. So that's just a little bit on, and we can send you, actually, when we do a follow-up email, we'll send the link if you would like to do a visa appraisal as well. So that's something you might want to do. Now, the final thing I just thought we could talk about is where to live in New Zealand. And we've touched on jobs in different locations, but we often get asked about, are most jobs in Auckland? Is it really expensive to live in Auckland? Or where would we advise people to live? Robyn, obviously, as a local, what would you say about that?
Well, I think, it depending on what sort of size of place you want to live in, the advantages of living in a city is you've got a bit more of the internal structure with transport and that type of thing. Auckland is the biggest city in New Zealand. However, Wellington, Christchurch, Hamilton, Dunedin are all bustling cities that offer great opportunities. But probably the cost of living is slightly lower, perhaps not for Wellington, but for the other ones it definitely is. So that's something to consider. On that point, the cost of living does come up a lot. It's very important to not, when you looking at information, it's very hard if you're comparing it with where you're currently living to here, because obviously what you earn is different, and how expensive certain things, utilities, are very different utility costs. So we always sort of say don't try and compare apples with pears, because they're two different things. So you need to perhaps look at more comparing, is it more expensive to live in Auckland versus living in Christchurch? And yes, it is. Yeah. But there are smaller cities as well, which are close to beaches, or if you like to be in the mountains or do hiking. Fairly much in New Zealand you can get to those sort of activities pretty quickly.
Pretty easy, yeah. Yeah. And I was just thinking about that with the whole rental, because I guess if you're coming with 2 or 3 children and you're looking to rent a family home, versus if you may be coming from more of an overseas experience, then you might flat share or get an apartment. So it's all very much individual. But the big thing I will say is that rents in New Zealand, like I know, say for example in the UK, you have to pay your council tax separately. So you pay rent and then you pay your council tax on top of it, which is quite hefty. And I know power is super expensive in the UK at the moment. And so if you were to look at that, in New Zealand you pay rent, you don't pay any sort of council tax that are covered by the landlord, and power's cheaper. And so where you might lose in one area, you might gain in another. So it's very hard just to look at one cost and go, because a lot of people go, wow, rent's expensive, but then you go, well, actually everything else is cheaper, so it's just making sure that you don't get too caught up on that, and just look a bit more holistically. But we can talk to you about that in more detail when we do a one-on-one consultation with you.
I think that's the thing to note, Jo, is that we are here to answer any questions, either if it's online now, or you can email us later, and we're happy to have a chat with you. Yeah,
exactly. And I just saw any test that you need to pass, except the English. So the only thing you'll need to do is the cultural competency course online, but it's not a test, but it's still something you're going to have to kind of look at and gem up on a little bit. So okay, we've got 1 minute, so as promised we'll keep to our time. So what I just want to remind you now is just to get your CV up to date, if it's not already. Get started with your registration with the Midwifery Council. If you are a nurse, you'll have to get nursing registration. You'll be limited to work, obviously, doing labour and delivery. Then we are posting a link to complete a very short, I'm calling it appraisal, but it's literally just like half a dozen questions. And then when we've got that information and we've got your CV, we can arrange a one-on-one chat with you online. And those are really super beneficial, because they'll just get you started, and it's all very individualized to your own needs. And then the final thing is just a reminder that I'm going to be
around
Singapore, the Netherlands, and the UK. So I'm actually leaving New Zealand to come and meet you, which is very, very exciting. Is there anything else there, Robyn, that we've met?
Just reach out if you've got any questions. Do reach out. We're happy to answer those for you.
Yeah, and I think so Jane has posted our email address there, so please just feel free to do that. We're very accessible by you. We are here to help. And as we said before, no charge for our services. We can help with the visa, and we can also help with your actual relocation as well. Cool. Okay, we've gone 1 minute over time, which isn't too bad, but thank you for taking the time to listen to us today. Hopefully you found something and got some useful information from it. And we hope to be able to help you in the future with your move to New Zealand.
That'd be great.
Cool.
See you soon.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.